this workshop, and if you don't wish to be recorded, you can turn your camera off, or you can leave the workshop and return to the program at a later date once we do post the recording. And I also just made an announcement. What you see on your screen right now is the list of supplies recommended. So if you would like to, please go ahead and gather those at this time. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge some people who this program would not be possible without. So thank you to Arezoo for developing this workshop and sharing your practice with us today. I also want to thank the curatorial team, Brianna Baki and Stephanie Sherwood. Finally, I want to thank all of you joining us today for taking time out of your busy schedules, especially during a week of so much uncertainty. I hope that this workshop provides a welcome distraction, and for some of you, maybe even it's an outlet to express how you've been feeling. Today, you will learn more about exhibition artist Arezoo Bharthania's process and how to transfer images onto different materials. As I mentioned before, Arezoo's work is part of the relating section of the Archive Machines exhibit. The artists in the relating section explore racial, environmental, and socioeconomic injustices within their communities and globally. The artworks in relating bring these issues to the forefront to facilitate gaining a better understanding of what other people and communities have endured. Before we keep going, I'm just going to make a few housekeeping notes. So if you plan on following along today, especially for those that are just joining us and haven't already done so, please gather your materials, which are listed on the screen. We are currently recording, so if you don't have all of those materials with you today, you will have the chance to come back at a later date and review the workshop. The format for today's workshop is going to be a little bit different than our other virtual programs. So for the first 20 minutes, Arezoo will be sharing a presentation of their work, process, and inspiration. We will address all questions at the end, and you may type them into the chat so that our staff can review them and then share them. Please keep your microphone muted during the presentation portion. After that, we'll get into the photo transfer workshop, which should take about 20 to 30 minutes. If you have any questions during the workshop, please do type those into the chat. I'll be reviewing those as we go along, and I will actually interrupt Arezoo just in case if you're stuck somewhere so that we can clarify it, because most likely if you're stuck, other people are going to be stuck as well. And then those first two sections that I just mentioned will be recorded. After that, we're going to stop the recording and have about 10 minutes for reflection and have a chance for everyone who's participating today to share what they've made. Another reminder, please keep your microphones muted during the presentations so that we can avoid any feedback or technical issues. If your microphone is inadvertently unmuted, we will go ahead and mute it for you. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll address them as soon as we can. For the presentation portion that will be at the end of Arezoo's presentation during the workshop, I'll go ahead and mediate those. However, due to limited time, it's possible that we won't have the chance to answer all of the questions that are put forth. So without further ado, let's get this started. It's my great pleasure to welcome Arezoo Bharthania. She is an interdisciplinary Los Angeles-based artist who has exhibited her work throughout the United States and internationally at Kipo Fair, Laundromat Art Space, Torrance Art Museum, Art Babu 146, University Art Museum of Long Beach, Ground Space Projects, the Seaver Gallery, and many more. She received her MA from Cal State University Northridge and her MFA from Cal State University Long Beach. Take it away.
Okay, so hi everyone. First of all, I wanted to thank LA Mac for inviting me to have an artist talk and image transfer workshop. And thanks to Stephanie and Marissa. They really helped me a lot to get here. And I'm glad to be part of their current exhibition, Archive Machines, which will be up until December 31st. And thanks to all of you for participating in this workshop. Okay, so since you might not be familiar with my work, so I'm going to start with a little history about myself, my work, and the concept behind it, and then we will jump into workshop. So I'm an Iranian American artist living and working in Los Angeles since 2007. I was born in Tehran in 1981 from an Iranian mother, Indian father. I grew up in Tehran until I was 25 and moved to the US with my husband. Los Angeles has been my home since then. So as Marisa told you guys, I got my MA from Northridge, Cal State Northridge, and my MFA from Cal State Long Beach in 2015. But before that, I studied my bachelor in art in Tehran. I'm currently a member of Jordan Ray Collective, and recently I have joined Level Ground Collective as well. Okay, so my works reflects the experience of creating home while living in a state of in-between. It reflects the space I occupy, which is navigated through the bodily experience of womanhood and a balance of dichotomies such as private, public, psychological, and physical environments here, there. My works are in various formats, depends on the narrative. Like it can be three-dimensional, like installation, sculpture, or sometimes 2D. That is formed by multiple layers made of various materials and textures, which are interfering and overlapping each other, which refers to layers of memory along with elements of the home with the knowledge that both are inseparable from political and social context. One of the elements in my work is the transfer images of photos that I've taken from LA and my hometown. The photos of LA are mostly from the neighborhood that I live in right now. And the photos of my hometown are the ones I've taken from my trips back to Tehran, and mostly from the neighborhood that I live in, which includes buildings, architectural elements, murals, and many of photos are from interior of the house that I grew up in. I use different materials such as transparency paper, vellum, different kinds of fabric to transfer images onto them. They all definitely have different results. Sometimes I do overlap them intentionally, which refers to the memory and identity. In my paintings and drawings, there are several references to those photos that I've taken, plus floral patterns from furniture, curtain, or other home and base elements. Okay, so Stephanie, if you don't mind, go back to the first slide. So now I can, I'm gonna start talk about each of my work, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of, explain them a little bit. So this one, as you guys can see, it's Nobody's Going Anywhere. This is my recent work, which is currently on view online at Artists and Poems, a Jordan Ray online show curated by Stephen Walkoff. In this show, artists were invited to choose a poem that has a meaning to them and then create an artwork inspired by the poem. So the poem I chose is called Nobody's Going Anywhere by Giselle Pessines. I wish I pronounced it correctly. She was a French writer and associated with the Surreal movement, and she passed away a couple years ago. Next slide, please. And as you can see, I transferred different images of trees on two different types of fabric. The right part is lace. I put the lace on the canvas, and since lace is really delicate, so I covered that with couple layers of matte medium and let them dry, and then transferred the image on top of that. But the left side, it was directly on onto the canvas. The next slide, yeah, so this is the detail of the work as I just explained. So the right side, as you can see, it's lace, and I covered it with medium, and then I did the transfer. And next slide, please. Okay, so this one is, it's called Intersection. The installation is a reference to an opened entry door or curtain hanging at home. So basically it implies the interior space and privacy. The yarns, as they refer to women's hair, are metaphor for womanhood and how they have to censor themselves in the society. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an installation that I did during COVID, and um, this online exhibition was curated by Renee Bernard. It was in June, actually. I installed it in my studio, as you can see, and it's been hung from the pipe, which runs through my space. I use vellum, and all the transfers were on vellum. And the next work, this one is called, it's titled LAX to IKA, IKA to LAX. This is an installation at Durden Ray Gallery in downtown LA. This was my last show before pandemic started, which was installed in a physical space and people could come and see it in person. I curated this show of about 10 artists. The installation is about approximately 18 foot long, which contains of 24 pieces put together. I used different kinds of fabric, paper, vellum, lots of transfers, as you can see. Next slide, please. Yeah, so basically it's all, I have transferred on different, paper, vellum, fabric, it's on everything. And the pictures are both, again, like the pictures I took some years ago from Tehran or from LA, my neighborhood. Next slide. Okay, so this one is called Safe in Home. The work was hung from ceiling, as you guys can see, and it's two-sided. The work is from the show at Seaver Gallery at Marlborough School, and it's from 2019. And next one, please. So many transfers onto the canvas, and most of them are being covered in paint or a piece of fabric. And by that, I mean like little pieces. I just, just put them, stick them onto the transfer. So it's partially visible and partially covered. And by that, I mean like sometimes I transfer and then I paint on top of that. And as you can see, it has so much detail to it, from sewing patterns to collage, transferred image, and decorative elements. As you guys can see, I use a lot of decorative elements in this work. Next one, please. Yeah, this one is called Home. And the fabric is satin. And I really had challenged to work on this one because of the glossy surface of it. And it was really hard to do the transfer. So if you guys want to use satin, make sure you, first of all, like cover that with a couple layers of medium, which I highly recommend the glossy medium, not the matte medium, because it's gonna leave stains on that. And then let it dry for a couple of days if you want the transfer to be completely, perfectly transfer onto this. Otherwise, the ink won't stick to the fabric. And you have to really be patient peeling off the fabric, the paper on that, from that. And next one, please. Yeah, so this is the detail of the work. Again, like from sewing to transferring and collaging onto satin fabric. Next one. These two are just different transfers. One on the right side is fabric and the left side is paper. So I just wanted, to put them together so you guys can see the differences between like fabric, paper, and how we transfer on them. Next one, please. Yes, so this one, this work is titled Other People. And this was at Pacific Courts Apartments in Long Beach at their display window in 2018. I had the opportunity to show my work for their exhibition titled Senses. I basically used the entire room for my installation, which contain about 40 pieces in various materials, as you can see, which such as like wood panels, tracing papers, vellum, different kinds of fabric, canvas, and many, many more. This was really a unique experimental exercise for me to paint and transfer on all these different materials. And next one, please, so you can see more details of the work. So as you can see, I installed all the rolls of tracing paper from the metal wires running along the ceiling, creating a multi-layered installation, which referred to interior versus exterior, private versus public. So basically on the back, on the wall, there is all these fabrics and canvas and vellums that I hung. And in front of that, it's all these tracing papers, rolls of tracing papers. And on the left side, it's all wood panels, which I transferred and painted on top of it. Next one, please. Yes, so this one is the title, I Wish It Does Not Get Bad. This work I did in 2015 for my solo show titled Escape the Gaze of the Blind Censor. Very little transfer, and mostly it was covered and blended with acrylic paint. And as you can see on the right side, the right picture, the transfers are mostly vertical stripes, which blended with the fabric pattern. So they're not so visible. And next one, please. This one is titled Light Me Up. The installation contains two parts. The top part has LED lights in it, and the bottom part has transfer image of the city of Tehran on transparency sheet. I had to, so basically when you want to transfer on transparency sheet, which I'm gonna show you guys later, but you have to cover the sheet with a glossy medium, glossy or matte medium before you do the transfer. And so, you know, the ink actually stick way better than just directly onto the transfer, the transparency sheet. And then you have to seal it with another medium. It can be gloss or matte. And yes, and next one, please. So this one is Here I Speak. This one also contains of two parts, one hung on the wall and the other one is laid down on the floor. The floor part is photo paper and the wall part is acrylic paint and some transfers, but the transfers are hidden under the sheer fabric, so you can barely see in this photo, which is part of, you know, the concept of the work, which it was censored and hidden under that. Next one, please. Yeah, and this one, it's called Entropic Future. This installation is, I did it in 2012. And that was exactly my first time experimenting transfer, which it was on resin. And for transferring onto resin, there is completely different process than paper or fabric. So the first step is you have to create a mold for your resin block. Then pour the resin in that mold, and before it dries out completely, you have to place your image, which the image has to be on transparency sheet, not like just normal paper. And then you have to put the transparency sheet on top of the resin, but just let it sit for a bit. And before it dries out, you have to peel off the transparency sheet. So all the ink will absorb into resin, but then the transparency sheet is, you know, you just have to remove that and peel it off which again, it's not an easy process. It's just so easy to explain it, but when you get into it, it's really hard working with that. But I really enjoyed that time doing that. And this is the installation I did. Some of them are paintings, and some of them, as I explained, are transferred images onto resin blocks. I'm going to show you a couple of samples that I have here. And that's it with my work. But before we get into workshop, I would love to show you guys 3 inspirational artists who have done or working with transfer images. So you guys can get more idea of how to use this method into, how to bring it into your work. Next one, please. And next one. Okay, so as most of you guys know, Robert Rauschenberg, he used a lot of transfer images into his work on different materials. So basically, he developed a process known as a transfer process using photos from mass media. Images from newspapers and magazines were soaked and then pressed face down onto the paper surface. He would then rub back and forth across the back of the image with a dry nib. This process gave the image the ghostly, forgotten memory look. Rauschenberg often then enhanced with white gouache or watercolor or ink washes. And next artist, Amanda Mears. She's she's MFA graduate from Claremont University. She uses transfer images, as you guys can see in her paintings. The black marks are transfers, and the colorful the color ones, those are all paintings. And it's really hard to say which one is transfer, which one is painting until you really get close to her work. And next slide. And as you can, so the left one, all the black ones are transfers. So she transferred and then she does the painting, which is acrylic or oil on top of that. But the right side, some of them are transfers and some of them are just, collage. So it's really hard to say which one is which until you really get close to her paintings, and then you realize some of them are not collages and some of them are just transfers. And next one. So this one is Dana Brown. She used transfer image as well. And as you guys can see, the background, which is a transfer image of a beach view. She did that with the transfer, and the red stripes are collages. She cut them into stripes from a magazine photo and then created this artwork. And okay, so here we're done with the slides, and I'm ready to jump, into workshop. But I would really be happy to, if you guys have any question or any thoughts, that would be great.
I can maybe get us started, Arezoo, because as you were going through, I had a couple of questions myself. It would be interesting to hear a little bit about maybe how you choose the materials, because as you're going through, you kind of see that the materiality of each piece is a little different. And sometimes it seems it's also dependent upon the physical installation. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the way that I choose the material, it depends on the narrative of the work that I'm talking about. So that's how I choose it, which sometimes is fabric, sometimes is mix of both of them, or sometimes I just use vellum, as you saw in that intersection work. It was all vellum because I was talking about censorship and like how as a women we have to censor ourselves and hide ourselves. So it depends on the narrative that I'm talking about. I choose my material.
Hi, have you ever done it on, done the image transfer on rice paper? That's my question.
No, I've done it on different papers, but not on rice paper. No, but I would love to experiment that too. But is there any reason for asking about the rice paper?
Well, I've just been working on it, just drawing and doing some ink drawing, and I'm sort of interested in trying that on the rice paper. I was just wondering if you know anybody that has, if it's a thing you can do, or how you would recommend going about that.
I haven't done it myself, but I would recommend you definitely use, again, as I was talking, like use a matte or gloss medium and cover your paper with that, and then do the transfer on top of that. I'm
Okay.
not sure if you do it directly, if you can peel off the paper perfectly. I'm not sure about that, but you can definitely, experiment that. But I highly recommend, if you want the rice paper to, look perfect and you're transferred, then definitely cover it with any kinds of medium. It can be anything. And then let it dry and then do the transfer on top of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
How about watercolor paper and canvas?
Yes, I've done on both, and the canvas actually, I did it with the gessoed canvas and just just the canvas itself, and it perfectly worked out, both of them. But the watercolor paper, again, you have to make sure you cover it with any kinds of medium, just one really thin layer of a medium, and let it dry, and then do the transfer.
And then do you think you'd be able to work with watercolor on top of that?
Well, it's gonna be on medium then, Okay, what you can do, if, like, for instance, if you think you're gonna transfer this much onto watercolor, so you have to mark your watercolor paper exactly, just mark it down and just do the medium, just that size, do your transfer, and then the rest of your watercolor paper, it doesn't have the medium, right? Then you can work on that.
Okay, so you put the medium on the back of the image you want to transfer,
Exactly.
not on the paper.
So you put the medium here.
Wow, this plaque is so big, so tall.
What?
Okay. So you have to put the medium on top of this paper, which you're going to transfer, and also on your watercolor paper, both. But as I said, like, mark it so it doesn't get out of that your mark paper, spot, and then you can just transfer on that, and then the rest of your paper, it doesn't have any medium, and you can then do the watercolor.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Just in the interest of time, I think at this point we should move on to the workshop component, but we will have more time for questions at the very end when we get into the reflection portion of the workshop. And just a reminder, if you aren't already muted, please do mute your microphone. And if you have any questions as we're going along in the workshop, please type them into the chat. I'll be monitoring that just so we don't have like 3 or 4 different people talking at once while Arezoo is demonstrating. Thank you.
Okay, so you guys can see the table, right? It's good? Okay, awesome. So here I'm gonna, before we get to the workshop, I'm gonna show you some of the samples. Okay, so let me show you the resin blocks that I just talked about. So these are the resin blocks that I just explained it, which is from my installation. So basically, I made the mold and then poured the resin into that little mold. And then before it was drying, I just put and the image was copied on this one, not on paper. So it was on transparency sheet. Then I just, placed it on the resin. And before it was completely dry, I was just peeling it off. So these are the results. And as you can see, they're ghostly transferred. It's not perfectly. Another thing, it's like if you want to transfer on transparency sheet, it would be way better if you cover it in a medium and then do your transfer. And then you can also transfer onto, the plexiglasses. But then instead of using gloss or matte medium, you have to use polymer for that, which you can find it in different brands. But that's way better than the gloss and medium, gloss and matte medium. So I'm going to show you guys these two. So today I'm going to use the gloss medium. Here I have, but you can use matte, depends on you guys, or you can just go simply with the super gel. That's fine too.
What are the brands of those? What are the various?
So the one that I'm using, I've done everything and they all work perfectly. So it's not like I'm recommending them, but Nova is great. Nova Color. Liquitex is, great, and it's really reasonable price. If you guys want to spend a lot of money, then you can do Golden. Golden is perfect. But again, like I've done with all of them and they're all same. So these are some of the samples. I just wanted to show you guys when I was talking about the glossy and the matte. So this is the difference. So I sealed my transfers with glossy, and you can see it has that glossy finish look. And if you do it with matte, then it's just matte. So it depends on how you guys want the finished work to look like. You can choose that. And this is another one. This one I used matte, so it's not shiny at all. Okay, so let's get to our workshop, which today I'm going to transfer on fabric, but you can use vellum, which here I have vellum, or it can be on canvas or fabric. Either one is good. And then you can do the whole image that you printed out. And if you guys have wording or numbers, make sure you flip them with Photoshop or any softwares that you guys use, and then do your transfer, because it's gonna look, so you guys want it to look good. And here I'm going to, I cut it out, or you can just like tear it if you like the, the edges to look different. And you can just tear the paper or just cut it, or as I said, like the whole thing. So first you have to figure out where you want to place your transfer. Today I'm gonna use the gloss actually. And it doesn't matter what size of brush you're using. It's just about what, you can choose that with, like, you have to find out the best perfect, size for the paper. Like if you're doing tabloid size, which is 11 by 17, then definitely you have to go with this one. It's faster, but any of them, it's gonna work out. So I'm using this one today. And so first we figure out where we want to put the paper, and then we put, we cover it with the medium, and not too little, not too much. Make sure you cover all of it. If you put too little medium, then it won't transfer perfectly, which again, if you like that outcome, then do that. Because as I showed you, like Rauschenberg loved the ghostly look of it. So then definitely you don't need to perfectly, you know, covered with medium. And you don't want to put too much because then the paper is going to be really soaked with the medium and it might tear. Okay, so this is perfect. And then we have to put the medium same way on this paper as well. But I'm going to put less than what I just did on the fabric. And try to just put it evenly, so it's not like one part has more medium than the other. Okay, as you can see, I just did the whole part, and then my fabric has medium all over it. And now we just place it on top of the fabric and gently, really gently, because they're really wet. You don't want the paper to tear, so you have to gently just push it. And what you want to do is, it would be great if you do it from center to the corner and to outside instead of like, you know, everywhere. So again, like you just put your hand in the center so it won't move, and then start just rubbing. Make sure, and because we do from center to out, all the air bubbles are just, you know, pushing out. Otherwise, if you leave air bubble inside, then it won't transfer on that spot. And make sure you do it perfectly with the edges too. If you want to have perfect edge, if you don't, then, you know, if you want the edges to be ghostly, then you don't need to perfectly do the edges. Okay, here I can say I use a little bit, you know, too much medium. It's really soaked, which is fine, but then I have to really like gently rubbing it so it won't, you know, the paper won't tear. And then definitely I need to let it dry for more than a day because it's like too much medium underneath that. But anyway, when you do this, you have to leave it for a day because it really needs to dry, and then, you know, the ink needs to soak into the fabric. So, oh, and if you see like some parts are peeling off, then just put more medium for those corners.
I'm sorry, a quick question. Did you put the medium on top of the picture as well?
Yes. So I put medium on fabric first, and then on the picture as well. So both of them.
I mean, not the back of the picture. Not.
No.
Okay.
So front. No. The
Thank
back. Actually, that's a good thing because if when you guys are rubbing, make sure you're not, you know, the mediums are not coming onto the back, because it's going to be real harder for you later when you want to remove the paper, you know. So what I suggest, I'm going to hold it like that. So what I suggest, you have a cloth and just remove the excess amount of medium, instead of like, you know, just covering the back side of your paper with that medium. You don't want to do that. And we have to remove all those air bubbles, otherwise it's not gonna transfer.
Arezoo, can you tell us briefly about the images that you transfer from? Like you said, they were inkjet images, but what kind of paper and ink do those images need to be? The ones you're getting.
So I've used different kinds of papers. Sometimes, like it depends on where I do my photocopy. Sometimes they have really thick papers, and sometimes they have really thin one. I would say the thick one, it's harder to peel off, but the transfer is way better. So it takes me longer time to peel off the paper. And but honestly, the ink stays way better on the fabric or on the vellum. So I would say do with the thicker one than those really thin photocopy, copy paper. But either one is going to work out. It's not like you can transfer if you choose a wrong one. It just, the result is going to be a little bit different. If you have a thin one, I suggest you to use maybe more medium and let it stay there for more than, like a day. Actually, a day is perfect for that.
Well, like some papers are coated. I mean, I do my own printing of photographs. And so some papers are coated and some papers are like matte. And just wondering if it'll come off of the coated papers or not, or if you have to use.
I haven't used coated paper, but with my experience, maybe it's gonna be hard to transfer because they have some coat on top of them. So because the ink has to be exposed, that's how it gets into medium. If it says being coated with something, but then I don't think it's gonna transfer. And sometimes if I really want to get a perfect transfer, which you guys saw on some of these, like this one. So make sure like you do your photocopy in a day, and after a day you do your transfer, because then the ink on the paper is really fresh. It's not so old. I would say after like a week or 2 weeks, because it dries, it's harder to move the paper, and the inks are not gonna stick so well on the fabric. But if they're really fresh, it would be way easier for you to work with. When I was doing when I was transferring onto resin, I should have done that within a day. So every day I was doing the photocopy on transparency sheet, and then I was doing the transfer exactly at that day onto the resin, because otherwise the ink was dry and I couldn't transfer. Okay, so this is perfect and all the bubbles are out. But as I said, I have to leave this for a day to dry, and then I can remove the paper. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use something that I had from before. Okay, so this one I did a couple days ago. So I'm gonna show you guys with this one. So for removing the paper, you can do it with your fingers, with sponge, or just a piece of cloth. I prefer cloth and just my finger. So what you want to do is like soak the paper.
You mean by water, using water?
Yeah, so it's just water with brush, or again, it can be with cloth, it doesn't matter. You just need to soak. I'm going to show you to you guys.
Does the glue have to be dry? Does the medium have to be dry before you do this part?
Yeah, so actually, when you're done in this level, you have to leave this. If you guys just did it with me, so you leave your artwork for a day or maybe 2 days, because the medium needs to really be dry out. So definitely 24, I don't know, like 30 hours, just leave it there. That's why I'm not, I'm not working on that. So this is from 3 days ago that I'm gonna remove the paper. So what I'm doing, I'm just soaking the paper with water. And depends on the thickness of the paper, it might soak very well or it might not. So we have to keep like, really be patient and just, can you see like it partially soaked the water, but not completely on the edges. And I'm assuming because when I was putting the mediums got on the back of the paper, that's why it's not soaking. But it's fine because we can anyway start peeling off the paper. So if you want to use cloth or sponge, you have to wet your cloth too. If you do with hand, then you don't need to. I'm going to show you both. So what you want to do, you just hold that and just really, really gently, because otherwise all the inks are going to come out, come off too. So gently. Just rub it back and forth. Can you see that? So it's gradually coming off. Or you can just do it with hand and just start, just peeling the paper. But again, make sure it's not the whole image, it's just the paper. If you need more water, then just soak it. And this part might take hours, I would say. Sometimes I just leave it for a bit and again come back, but you have, if you just leave it and come back, then you have to soak it again properly because it's going to dry out so quickly. And with the edges, just really just rub them gently. Can you see it's just coming off? So I'm removing the papers and our photo is showing. but definitely it has a like foggy look because still lots of papers are stick to the ink. And since the fabric that I'm using, it's really smooth versus some other fabrics, like, you know, the lace or other fabrics, or if they have really harsh textures like this one, then these are really harder to transfer. So when you are doing this part, you have to really, really be you know, just rub it so gently. Otherwise, all the inks will come out so quickly. But this fabric is easy to work with. So how are we doing with the time, Marissa?
I was just about to do a time check, actually. We're about 3 minutes until 2 o'clock. So if we want to start to wrap up the workshop portion and then move through the questions and reflection, let me know when you're about done, because then I will stop the recording portion and then folks can share what they've been working with and ask questions one another.
So let me show you guys. So I'm not gonna, you know, finish the whole thing, but I just did it partially. Let me show you the finished work. It's still not perfect because there are still like, you know, paper all over it. So it has like that foggy look to it. You know, it's still not completely done, but because we don't have time, but you guys have to still like keep going until all the papers are out and you don't see any paper and the transfer is perfectly, you know. And then what you want to do then is dry, and then you go back. You have to seal this, otherwise the ink, it won't stay there. You have to seal it with your gloss medium or matte medium, which I'm gonna use my matte medium. I like the matte finish look of it. So here, so let's say this is perfect and we're done with the bottom part and no more paper there, it's all ink. So then we just start using our, just seal it with medium. And I would say if once you sealed it with the medium, you can go back and fix it. So make sure there is no more paper left there and the image has been transferred perfectly, and then do the medium. Otherwise, you can't go back and fix anything. And make sure you put enough coat of medium at the end. Sometimes I do 2 coats, sometimes just do it once. Okay, so this is the finished work. Can you guys see that? Okay, yeah. So the matte and the gloss, you know, depends on you. Again, I'm saying like This one is on matte, so it doesn't have that shiny finish. But if you guys like the gloss finish, oh, and when I talk about like ghostly, as you can see, this one is ghostly because like these parts, I didn't use enough medium on some parts, so it's kind of like ghostly transferred. And this one is shiny because of the glossy. Okay, so here we're done with the workshop. If you want to stop the recording.